Some places are better left forgotten. Some doors should never be opened. But what if you had no choice? Today, I will tell you a story of a man who stumbled upon something that should have never been found. A secret buried deep beneath the earth, waiting for someone foolish enough to awaken it. If you enjoy unsettling tales, don't forget to like and subscribe. Now, let's begin. The Road to Nowhere. Daniel Cross was a man who thrived on solitude. A documentary filmmaker specializing in abandoned places, he traveled across the country, capturing lost history and forgotten structures. His latest obsession was an old mining town called Black Hollow, a place that had vanished from records over 50 years ago. It was said that one night, every single inhabitant disappeared without a trace. No bodies, no signs of struggle, just an empty town left to rot. It was exactly the kind of story Daniel lived for. The road leading to Black Hollow was barely more than a dirt path, winding through a dense forest. His GPS gave up miles ago, leaving him to navigate using an old map. The deeper he drove, the more the trees seemed to close in around him. The air grew thick, heavy, almost suffocating. Then, as if stepping through an unseen barrier, he emerged into a clearing. Black Hollow stood before him. Echoes of the past. The town was eerily intact. Buildings stood as if frozen in time, wooden signs creaking in the wind. The streets were covered in a fine layer of dust, untouched by footprints or tire tracks. Daniel parked his car near what looked like the remains of an old general store. As he stepped out, a strange sensation washed over him. It was as if the air itself was listening, waiting. He pulled out his camera and began filming. June 7th, 2023. Arrived in Black Hollow. The town is in remarkable condition. No signs of recent human activity. It's as if time stopped here. His voice sounded hollow in the vast silence. Wandering through the streets, he noticed something unsettling. There were objects left, as if people had just vanished mid-action. A rocking chair on a porch, still slightly swaying. A set of playing cards scattered on a table. A half-eaten meal inside a diner, long since rotted away. And then he found the church. The journal. The doors were slightly ajar. Inside, pews were covered in thick dust, and a massive, crumbling altar stood at the far end. On it, an old leather-bound book rested, its pages yellowed with age. Daniel picked it up carefully, flipping through its pages. The handwriting was frantic, filled with desperate scribbles and scratched-out words. They came from below, We heard them whispering in the dark. At first, we thought it was the winds, but the voices grew louder, closer. They know we hear them. Daniel frowned and kept reading. They took Samuel first. He walked outside at night, said he heard his mother calling him. But she's been dead for 10 years. When we found him, his eyes were missing. The words became more erratic. They don't like the light. We locked ourselves inside. The sun will rise soon. If we last the night, maybe we'll be safe. The final entry was scrawled in shaking letters. There is no morning here. A chill ran down Daniel's spine. He set the book down and turned to leave. Then he heard it whisper. The descent. It came from beneath the floorboards, a soft, echoing whisper, too distorted to understand. Daniel froze, heart hammering. Then, the trapdoor behind the altar creaked open. Against every instinct, Daniel raised his camera and approached. He shined his flashlight into the opening. A wooden ladder led down into darkness. The air smelled damp, stale. Something moved below. For a moment, his rational mind fought back. Turn around. Get in the car. Leave. But the whisper came again. This time, it formed words. Help me. A human voice. Into the abyss. Daniel descended, his flashlight barely piercing the darkness. The ladder led into a tunnel carved from the earth, the walls lined with strange symbols. He pressed forward, filming everything. The passage opened into a vast underground chamber. At its center stood a pit, an unnatural blackness swirling within. Around it lay human bones, some ancient, some disturbingly fresh. Then he saw the faces, dozens of them, emerging from the darkness, pale, hollow-eyed, their mouths moving in silent screams. They clung to the walls, their bodies half-formed, as if struggling to escape something unseen. Daniel stumbled back, his breath ragged. The whispering grew deafening. From the pit, something began to rise. No escape. A shape unfolded, impossibly tall, its limbs stretching and twisting. It had no eyes, yet Daniel felt it staring straight into him. Its mouth split open, revealing rows of needle-like teeth. Then it spoke. More. Daniel turned and ran. The tunnel seemed longer than before, the whispers chasing him, clawing at his mind. He reached the ladder, scrambling up as something cold brushed against his ankle. Bursting into the church, he slammed the trapdoor shut and bolted outside. The town was different now. The buildings distorted, the sky an unnatural shade of black. His car was gone. The whispering was everywhere. The forgotten ones. Daniel ran. He didn't know where, only that he had to keep moving. The streets twisted, looping back on themselves. Every door he tried was locked. His own footprints vanished behind him. And then he saw them. The people of Black Hollow, standing in the streets, watching him with hollow eyes. Their mouths moved, but no sound came out. And at the center of them stood the creature, its endless grin stretching wide. Daniel screamed. Then, silence. The final broadcast. Weeks later, his camera was found at the edge of the forest, covered in dust. The footage inside was corrupted, filled with static and brief glimpses of things that shouldn't exist. And at the very end of the recording, just before the screen went black, there was one last frame. Daniel staring into the lens, his eyes hollow, his mouth moving silently, and then a whisper, more. If you enjoyed this story, remember to like and subscribe. And whatever you do, if you ever hear whispers from below, don't listen.
The Silent Predator. Not all nightmares are born from the supernatural. Some walk among us, disguised as ordinary people. Tonight, I will tell you a story about a man whose disappearance led to the discovery of something far more terrifying than ghosts, something real. If you enjoy unsettling tales, don't forget to like and subscribe. Now, let's begin. The Missing Journalist. Ethan Carter had a reputation for uncovering dark secrets. As an investigative journalist, he had exposed corrupt officials, human traffickers, and even serial killers. But his latest story led him to something he never expected. On May 14th, he sent a message to his editor. "I think I found him. The one they never caught." That was the last time anyone heard from him. When police arrived at his apartment, they found his laptop open. The screen displayed a partially written article titled, "The Silent Predator." The file ended mid-sentence. "He knows him close." But there was no trace of Ethan. The first clue. Ethan's disappearance became an urban legend. Some believed he went into hiding, afraid of what he had uncovered. Others thought he had been silenced by powerful enemies. But one person refused to let it go, his younger brother, Daniel. Daniel spent months combing through Ethan's notes, searching for anything that could explain what happened. Then, one night, he found a flash drive taped under Ethan's desk. It contained a single file, a grainy black and white video. The footage. The video was shaky, filmed at night. Ethan's voice could be heard whispering, "I found his hunting ground." The camera panned across an empty parking lot, then zoomed in on an old gas station. The place looked abandoned, its windows covered in grime. But there was something off. The gas pumps were still running. Ethan moved closer, his breathing uneven. He turned the camera towards a rusted van parked near the station. The side door was slightly open. Inside, something shifted. A figure sat in the driver's seat, barely visible in the darkness. His face was obscured by shadows, but his eyes reflected the camera's light, watching. Ethan's whisper turned panicked. "He sees me." The camera shook violently as he ran. Footsteps echoed behind him, heavy, deliberate. Then, the screen cut to black. The silent predator. Daniel replayed the video 100 times. He enhanced the footage, trying to get a better look at the man in the van. Then, he saw it. On the passenger seat, partially covered by a tarp, lay a human hand. Daniel's stomach turned. He dug deeper into Ethan's research and found something even more disturbing. A pattern. Over the past 15 years, multiple people had vanished near old gas stations and truck stops. Always at night, always in remote areas. There were never any bodies, only abandoned vehicles and wallets left behind. And the last recorded sighting of every missing person? Security footage showing them talking to a man in a van. The vanishing points. Daniel mapped out the locations. The disappearances formed a rough path stretching across multiple states. He focused on the last known case, a woman named Lisa Howard, missing for 6 weeks. Her car was found near a rundown motel, her belongings still inside. A security camera captured her walking towards something just outside the frame. Then she was gone. Daniel found the motel and checked in, using a fake name. He waited in his car, watching. At 2:37 a.m., a van pulled into the lot. The same rusted, white van from Ethan's footage. A man stepped out, moving slow, precise. He wore an old mechanic's uniform. His face was plain, forgettable, but his eyes scanned the lot like a predator sizing up prey. The trap. Daniel knew he had to act. He followed the van when it left, staying far behind. After 20 minutes, it pulled onto an overgrown dirt road leading into the woods. The van stopped in front of an old, abandoned cabin. Daniel parked a safe distance away and grabbed the baseball bat from his trunk. His heart pounded as he approached, the woods eerily silent around him. The front door was unlocked. Inside, the air was thick with decay, the smell of old blood. Daniel moved deeper, past walls covered in old newspaper clippings, articles about missing people. Ethan's face was among them. Then he heard it, a soft click. The door slammed shut behind him. The cage. The lights flickered on. Daniel turned and saw the man from the van standing in the doorway. He wasn't holding a weapon. He didn't need to, because behind him, metal cages lined the walls. And inside those cages, people were still alive. Some barely moved, others pressed against the bars, their eyes hollow with terror. And in the last cage, Ethan, alive, but barely breathing. Daniel lunged, but the man moved fast, too fast. He grabbed Daniel by the throat and whispered, "I was wondering when you'd come." Daniel gasped for air, his vision blurring. But before darkness took him, he saw Ethan's fingers twitch. A warning. Daniel reached into his pocket, fingers closing around his keychain, a small can of pepper spray. With the last of his strength, he sprayed it directly into the man's eyes. The predator let out a furious, animalistic howl. Daniel collapsed to the floor, scrambling backward. Ethan kicked at the door of his cage, shaking it violently. The lock, it was weak. Daniel grabbed the baseball bat and swung with everything he had. The lock shattered. Ethan stumbled out. Together, they ran. The end of the hunt. They didn't stop until they reached Daniel's car. The van was still parked by the cabin, its owner nowhere in sight. The police found the cabin hours later. 6 victims were rescued, but the man? Gone. The FBI classified him as an active serial predator. Witnesses came forward, claiming they had seen his van at different truck stops over the years. But he was always one step ahead. And Ethan's story, the one that started it all, it was published under a new title, The Man Who Hunts at Night. But some still call him the Silent Predator. And he's still out there, watching, waiting. If you enjoyed this story, remember to like and subscribe. And if you ever see an old van parked alone at night, keep driving.
Hello, friends. Today, I have a story that will make you question what lurks beyond the veil of reality. It all started when an old radio was found in an abandoned house. At first, it seemed ordinary, but when someone turned it on, it began transmitting voices, messages that shouldn't have existed. If you enjoy eerie tales, don't forget to like and subscribe. Now let's uncover this chilling mystery. The house on the edge of town. In a small, forgotten town, a group of 3 friends, Anna, Max, and Lisa, decided to explore an old abandoned house on the outskirts. The house had a grim reputation. People whispered about strange sounds and disappearances, but most dismissed the rumors as local superstition. The friends arrived just before sunset, armed with flashlights, a camera, and a voice recorder. As they stepped inside, the house seemed to inhale their presence. Dust swirled in the air, and the wooden floor creaked like an ancient beast awakening. The walls were covered in peeling wallpaper, the scent of mold and decay thick in the air. In the living room, an object caught Max's eye, a dust-covered antique radio sitting atop a wooden cabinet. Unlike the rest of the house, the radio appeared untouched by time. Max, fascinated by vintage items, eagerly turned the knob. Static crackled from the speakers, and then, amidst the white noise, came a whisper. "Help me, please." The friends exchanged uneasy glances. At first, they thought it was an old transmission or interference. But then, the whisper grew more distinct. "You shouldn't be here." Trapped inside. Lisa shivered as a sudden chill filled the room. The air felt thick, heavy, almost suffocating. Anna reached for the front door, but the knob wouldn't turn. "It's stuck," she muttered, tugging harder. Max tried the windows, sealed shut. Then the radio spoke again. He knows you're here. The static hissed violently, and the room plunged into darkness. Their flashlights flickered, and for a brief moment, a shadow moved across the far end of the room. Lisa gasped. "Did you see that?" Max shone his flashlight toward the shadow, but there was nothing there. Then, from upstairs, came the unmistakable sound of footsteps, slow, deliberate, moving toward them. The figure in the hallway. The three huddled together as the footsteps grew louder. Anna whispered, "We need to get out of here." The radio crackled again, but this time it was laughter. A deep, guttural chuckle that made their skin crawl. "He is watching." Then a sharp creak. They turned to see a tall, shadowy figure standing at the bottom of the staircase. The figure was featureless, wrapped in darkness, as though it absorbed all light. Its elongated limbs twitched unnaturally. Then, slowly, it raised its hand and pointed at them. The house groaned as if it were alive, and the walls began to close in. A desperate escape. Lisa screamed, and in a blind panic, Max grabbed a chair and hurled it at the window. This time, the glass shattered. "Go now," he yelled. Anna scrambled through the broken frame first, followed by Lisa. Max hesitated for just a moment, long enough to hear the radio whisper again. "You belong to him now." Something grabbed his ankle. He looked down and saw a hand, long, clawed fingers wrapping around his leg. With a desperate kick, he broke free and lunged out the window, tumbling onto the overgrown grass outside. The house loomed in silence, the radio's whisper fading into the wind. The haunting continues. They never returned to that house, but the nightmare didn't end there. That night, Anna woke up to the sound of static in her bedroom. She turned, and there, on her desk, was an old radio, one she had never owned. It crackled to life. "He is still watching." Max found muddy footprints leading from his window to his bed. Lisa's phone played an audio recording she didn't remember making. A voice whispered, "You are part of this place now." More than just a legend. Terrified, they tried to convince themselves it was paranoia. But each night, the whispers grew louder. Shadows flickered in the corners of their rooms, and the static followed them everywhere, on the radio, the TV, even on their phones. Max decided to investigate. He searched online for any history of the houses. What he found chilled him to the core. Decades ago, a recluse named Henry Wren had lived there. The townspeople called him the Whisperer because he was often seen talking to himself, as if responding to voices no one else could hear. One night, he disappeared without a trace. When the authorities entered his house, they found his old radio still playing, whispering. The same words Max had heard, "You belong to him now." An unfinished tale. Max shut his laptop. The whispers had started again. But this time, they weren't coming from his phone or a radio. They were right behind him. He turned slowly, his breath caught in his throat. A shadow loomed in the doorway, tall and featureless. Its elongated limbs twitched as it raised a hand and pointed at him. Final words. What was that entity? Was it bound to the house, or has it followed them? Some mysteries should never be disturbed. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe. And tell me, what would you do if you heard whispers from an old radio? Let me know in the comments. Until next time, sleep well.
The never-ending room. Some places defy logic. Some doors, once opened, refuse to be closed. Tonight, I will tell you a story about a man who entered a room that shouldn't exist. A place where time and space break apart, and once you step inside, you might never leave. If you enjoy unsettling tales, don't forget to like and subscribe. Now, let's begin. The Hotel of Whispers. Ethan Grayson was just looking for a place to sleep. After driving for hours through an unfamiliar countryside, exhaustion forced him to pull over at a small roadside motel. The sign flickered in the night, Hollow Pines Inn. It looked old, forgotten, the kind of place that shouldn't be open anymore. But the vacancy sign glowed red. Too tired to care, Ethan parked and walked into the dimly lit lobby. A man at the front desk, pale and silent, handed him a key without a word. The number 606 was etched into the metal tag. Ethan nodded, took the key, and climbed the narrow, creaking stairs. The hallway smelled of dust and something else. Something metallic, like rust or blood. When he reached room 606, he hesitated. There was something off about the door. It looked newer than the others, freshly painted, as if it didn't belong. But sleep weighed heavy on him. He inserted the key and stepped inside. The room was ordinary. A bed, a desk, a window overlooking an empty parking lot. Nothing unusual. At least, not yet. The first night, Ethan barely managed to kick off his shoes before collapsing onto the bed. He didn't bother checking the closet, the bathroom, or locking the door. Sleep took him instantly. But something woke him in the middle of the night. A soft knocking. Not at the door, at the closet. Ethan's body stiffened. The room was completely dark, but he could feel it, the weight of something watching him from inside that closet. His breath slowed. The knocking came again, slow and deliberate. For a long time, he did nothing, just listened. Then, suddenly, silence. Eventually, Ethan exhaled, forcing himself to relax. Maybe it was the pipes. Maybe the motel was just old, creaky. He turned over and tried to ignore the lingering sense of unease. But before he could fall asleep again, something whispered from inside the closet. "You shouldn't have come." The room that traps you. The next morning, Ethan barely remembered falling back asleep. The whisper could have been a dream, a half-conscious trick of the mind. But as he stretched and rubbed his eyes, his stomach twisted. The room was different. The furniture had moved. The bed was now against the opposite wall. The window showed a different view, no longer the parking lot, but a dense, endless forest. Ethan sat up fast. His heart pounded as he turned to the door. He grabbed the handle, twisted, locked. He rattled the knob harder. No use. Panic surged in his chest. What the hell was going on? Then, behind him, the closet door creaked open. Ethan spun around. The closet should have been empty. It wasn't. Inside, there was another door. A door identical to the one he had just tried to open. And beyond it, a dimly lit hallway stretched endlessly into darkness. The never-ending hall. Ethan stood frozen, his mind struggling to understand. There was no way a hallway could fit inside a motel closet. No way it could extend that far. Then something moved inside the hallway. a shadow shifting in the distance. It wasn't human. It was taller, thinner, with joints that bent the wrong way, and it was coming closer. Ethan didn't wait. He ran through the door, slamming it behind him. He expected to be back in the hallway of the motel. Instead, he was standing in another identical room. The same bed, the same window showing an unfamiliar landscape, the same closet. He was back where he started. The only difference, the knocking had started again. The descent into madness. Ethan lost track of time. Every time he tried to leave, he ended up in another version of room 606. Each time, the view outside the window changed. Snow-covered mountains, a burning city, a vast ocean with no horizon. The whispers grew louder. The knocking never stopped. And worst of all, the thing in the hallway was getting closer. He tried everything. He screamed. He broke the furniture. He even smashed the window, hoping to climb out. But there was no outside. Just a void. An endless black abyss. When he turned back, the room had reset. The bed was made. The closet was closed. And the door was still locked. Ethan sat on the floor, his mind unraveling. Was he dead? Trapped in some kind of purgatory? Then, for the first time, his phone buzzed. A message. There is a way out. His hand shook as he typed a reply. How? The response came instantly. You have to let it in. The final choice. Ethan stood before the closet door, his breath unsteady. He didn't know what would happen if he opened it. Would the thing in the hallway take him? Would he finally escape? Or would he disappear like all the others before him? There was no way to know. Slowly, he reached for the handle. The knocking stopped. The door swung open on its own. Inside, the hallway stretched before him, and at the far end stood the figure, motionless, waiting. Its head tilted at an unnatural angle, its fingers twitching eagerly. It smiled. Ethan took a deep breath and stepped inside. The motel still stands. No one ever found Ethan Grayson. His car remained parked outside the Hollow Pines Inn, covered in dust. The motel owner, when questioned, simply shrugged. Room 606? We don't have a room 606. Never did. But travelers passing through have reported strange occurrences. Faint knocking sounds in the night, a whisper through the vents. And sometimes, guests wake up in a different room than the one they checked into. If you ever stay in a roadside motel, be careful which door you open, because some rooms don't let you leave. If you enjoyed this story, remember to like and subscribe. And if you ever hear knocking from your closet, whatever you do, don't open the door.